Welcome everybody to my bow, sword, and board stamina necromancer build for the Elder Scrolls Online. This is an incredibly strong PvP build. It is very well rounded. We are fast, we have great regen, we're very durable, and we've got some serious firepower as well. And man, this is a good build. I worked really hard with the stamina necromancer just to kind of get a build together that really synergized with the Stam Necro kit, and on top of it, I wanted a build that helped make up for what the Stam Necro was lacking in PvP as well. So this is the result. I've come up with a build that has incredible healing power. It's got an incredible uptime on major protection, really great offensive stats, really great offensive pressure, awesome sustained pressure with the major defile that it can throw out as well, a massive amount of AoE burst and single target burst, and on top of it, this is a beautiful stamina pet build. So we're using a lot of the necro pet mechanics, a lot of the corpse mechanics to make this build work. And man, I honestly didn't think it would work this well, but it does. It really does. So I hope that you guys enjoy this build. I hope that you guys enjoy the footage. I have got over 15 minutes of footage for this build, so I hope you guys enjoy watching it. And yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So to begin, I am a wood elf on this spec. This is a medium armor kind of speed focused, high healing, high damage build. So Wood Elf is a fantastic option for this. Orc is also a great option. Between the two, they're pretty 50-50. Both of them are going to be great for this build. We're not using Mist Form or anything, so the Wood Elf speed bonus is the exact same as the Orc one because it's really only in Sprint where we really need that bonus speed. Now, you can, of course, go for other good stamina races like Redguard or even Nord would work fairly well, especially because we have such a good amount of alt gen on this build. Nord would pair well with that. However, I think the Wood Elf and Orc combo is definitely the best for this build. Now, taking a look at our max stat on this spec, we've got 10k Magicka, 22.5k health, and 35k stamina. Now, just a heads up, I don't have any Undaunted passives, but we are wearing 7 medium on this build right now. If we had the Undaunted passives and 511, we could reasonably have a lot more max stat on this spec. 11k mag almost, we'll have around 24k HP and 36k plus stamina. So we'll go up quite a bit of stat if we had those Undaunted passives, but if you don't have the Undaunted passives like me, I would recommend going for the 7 medium just because you get a little bit more regen, and of course you get a little bit more weapon crit for the 7 medium as well. Now, taking a look at the regen side of things, I'm going to buff up with the potion and the pets so you guys get to see all the regen. 714 Magicka, 1057 health, and 2122 stamina recovery. So really good stam sustain, and the health recovery is actually a lot better than what we see here. We are running the Troll King set, so when we fully buff up with Troll King, we're sitting at around 3000 health recovery on this spec. So really nice health and stamina sustain. We don't need a lot of mag sustain at all because we only have a few Magicka skills and we don't need to cast them super often, so no big deal for the mag recovery there. Now, taking a look at our weapon damage and our weapon critical, we're going to buff up with our potion here. We've got 46, almost 47% weapon crit, and our weapon damage is coming in at 3,300. Now, we also have the infused back bow here, the Griffin's bow. We're fully buffed, sitting at just shy of 4,000 weapon damage on this build. Now, we also have the minor force buff up, and we've got the debuff from the sword and board kit, so we can put out quite a bit of pressure on this build with these offensive stats. The higher crit rate also really nice for our healing, and the crit rate gets even better as our opponent's health begins to drop. On our front bar, we get them a 10% bonus crit, and on both bars, we get up to 20% bonus critical healing as well, which is really, really nice. Now, the resistances on this build are not crazy high. We've got 21.5k or so physical and spell resist, and then 2675 critical resist as well. So we don't look crazy tanky from the outside looking in, but we've got a lot of healing over time and some really powerful buffs on this build. The major protection that we can keep up is going to be a big deal, and it allows us to be quite a bit tankier on this build than you would think. Now, taking a look at the mundus we're running, we have got the Steed Mundus. This is great for the health recovery, really nice for this spec, and then on top of it, that movement speed. The movement speed, I think, really helps put this build together. It is a corpse-based build, but we do a lot of movement with it, and where you set your corpse field down before you pull it for the major protection is really important, and the movement speed helps you get that good positioning. So I think the Steed is definitely the best way to go for the mundus here. And then for the food, we have got the Artaeum Takeaway Broth. This is pretty much the best stam food in the game. We get max health, max stam, we get stam recovery and health recovery off of this. Really, really nice stuff. Every single stat we can use on this build just to push us further. Now, the potion that we're using on this spec is the Essence of Weapon Power, and this is the potion you definitely have to go for because it gives us the Major Brutality and the Major Savagery buffs, as well as the Stamina Restore for that Major Endurance buff too. All of these buffs we need for the Stam Necro. The Necro, of course, doesn't have any buffs really in its kit, so yeah, gotta go for this potion to keep our buffs up. And it's just nice because we don't have to really worry much outside of the potion for those buffs. We don't have to cycle any abilities or anything, which is just less buff management in the long run. Now, let's take a look at the gear we're running on this spec. The first set that we've got is the Troll King, and we talked about this when we were looking at the health recovery. We get healing done on the one piece, and then when we drop below 50% health and heal ourselves, we get 1494 base health recovery. Now, our bonuses push this up to around 2000 health recovery. Really, really good set for the Stamina Necromancer, and the reason I went with Troll King is because Stamina Necromancer needs that healing power. It needs a lot of healing over time, so it can properly use its HP costing Purge in order to actually defend itself. And I found having the Troll King set plus Vigor plus all the other heals over time we have on this spec, I was actually able to spam the Purge, and it worked really well for this build just because I was able to reach that kind of healing power threshold that we needed to be at. So Troll King is definitely a must for this spec. Now, the next set that we have is the Hunt set, and this, in all honesty, guys, is probably the best sustained Stamina Necromancer set in the game. So we get max stam weapon damage, really nice for our outgoing damage and healing. And then on the 5-piece, when our pet attacks an enemy that we've also attacked in the last 10 seconds, you heal for 2,685 health and restore 1174 stamina on a 5-second cooldown. So this is the equivalent of around 500 health and stamina recovery on the Stamina Necromancer. And this synergizes incredibly well with our Archer pet. The Archer pet is just going to attack whatever we focus our fire on, and as long as we keep that Archer up, not only is he giving us our sustain boost that you get from our Necromancer passives, but we also get that bonus sustain off their light attacks here. So a really good set just to give us that stam sustain that we kind of needed, because Necromancer has really high regen stat, but not a lot of resource restore outside of its regen. So this adds that resource restore that we're desperately needing, and of course this can restore resource through block as well, which is very, very valuable. And finally, the last set that we're running is the Griffin's Ferocity set. You guys know I love this set on medium armor builds. Weapon crit, weapon damage. When we deal direct damage, we gain minor force and minor expedition for 3 seconds, increasing our critical damage and movement speed by 10%. Both of these are really fantastic buffs for our outgoing damage and, of course, our survivability with the speed. And then the weapon crit, weapon damage, just fantastic for the Necromancer to give us more damage and healing as well. Griffins, just in general, is probably the best all-around medium armor set just for a speedy damage medium armor build. And that's why I've picked it here, just to give us those buffs that we're kind of missing. Now, taking a look at the weapons on this build, the back bar, we have got the Griffin's Bow, so no change on the swap. We've got Griffins on both sides, and we've got an infused bow with the weapon spell damage enchant here. And the weapon spell damage enchant, of course, is just going to buff our outgoing damage and healing even further when we switch to that front bar. On the front bar, we've got the Nirnhoned sword and board, and we've got a Sturdy on the shield with the stamina enchant, just to have that reduced cost of block, and of course that maximum stamina. Really, really nice for our outgoing damage and healing. And the Nirnhoned sword is pretty much the best all-around choice for one hand and shield. Just for damage and healing, you get a lot out of the Nirnhoned, more so than you do out of sharpened or precise on the one hand and shield. And that's just because of how it stacks the damage in the calculation. Nirnhoned one hand and shield is really good. So we've also got the poison on here too. And I went with the poison because we're using sword and board, so we can proc the poison with our bash, which we're going to be including in our weave because the bash on sword and board is very, very strong. And it, of course, procs off our sword and board kit and the light attacks, so we have a pretty good chance to proc these poisons. And well, the enchant is also going to be really crappy because we only get half the enchant value on a sword and board one hand bar there, so the poison is definitely the way to go to apply additional pressure on this build. You could even go for the life steal poison if you want here, just to add more healing over time, but I don't think this build really needs it because our healing is already so good. Now, taking a look at our jewelry, I've actually got full robust with weapon damage here, and the robust weapon damage combo I think is the best if you don't have the money for the infused. The infused is better, but it is quite a bit more difficult to get because you have to transmute all these Griffin rings. Robust is a great option, especially if you want to play this build in no CP. I would recommend keeping the robust so you have that extra stam pool. Ideally, you go for the infused though, you get that big stack of weapon damage, and this build will start to hit even harder and harder. Now for the gear, guys, I've got a mix of impenetrable and well-fitted, and I've got actually 5 impen on and 2 well-fitted. I think this is pretty ideal for this spec. If anything, you could actually drop a well-fitted for 1 more impen just to add a little bit more durability. We're very durable on this spec, surprisingly tanky for how low our HP is and how low our resists are. But the impen is definitely a big part of that, so we have to have at least 5 impen, I think, for this build to start to function properly. I played it with only 1 or 2 impen, and it was really rough, but after getting the more impen on, it definitely felt a lot better. Now, the well-fitted trait, I think, is also a good choice just for that roll dodge. I mean, we've got a roll dodge, we've got a sprint, so it really depends on your playstyle how much you want to go for in your spread here. For the enchants on the gear, I would highly recommend full maximum stamina enchants. I have a single tri-stat Hacky Joe here, and that's just kind of making up for the fact that we don't have those Undaunted passives, but even if you don't have the Undaunted, I would still recommend going for the full max stam enchants. Really great combination on this build, and just giving us that best damage and healing that we can get on this spec. Now, taking a look at the skills that we're running on the first bar here, this is our primary offensive bar. And the first ability we've got here is Ransack. Now, I went with Ransack because we didn't need the Magicka Pierce. We've got quite a bit of negative effect on this build, so if we go for the Pierce Armor, we could add the extra negative effect just to give more condition spam. But I liked Ransack because we get the Minor Resolve buff, just a little bit more durability on this build, which can come in handy in the long run. This is our primary spammable, though, for this spec, and not only does it do the debuff, but we're pretty much going to poke everybody once our combo's been set with the Ransack and try to get that big explosion on them. It's very cheap too, which makes it a really great ability not only to spam, but to weave in with the bash as well. Now, the next ability we have is actually Silver Leash, and I went with Silver Leash because, well, 2 big reasons. The first big reason is that we're running Blast Bones, which is the next skill we've got there, and Silver Leash is just going to help make our Blast Bones work better. Blast Bones has a really hard time chasing people, but if you Silver Leash them close to you, it has a lot less distance to travel, and you can reliably get a much better Blast Bones to work than you would if you didn't have the ability to control them. Now, the second big reason that I'm using Silver Leash is actually for our ultimate. We're using the Pestilent Colossus ultimate, and when you drop the Colossus and leash someone into it, it is incredibly deadly, and if you catch someone with this combo, you will absolutely destroy them. So I really like that combo, and I tried it a few times on this build. In the footage, you guys will see me do the Colossus Leash combo. It's very, very strong, and you can really catch people with an interesting burst with it. So I thought the synergy with Silver Leash and Necromancer was just there, especially since Necromancer doesn't really benefit from being crazy mobile or anything. You kind of want to camp your corpses so you can pull stuff out of them later. I really liked this setup, and it gives us the ability to actually control a choke really well, which I did enjoy too. Now, the next skill that we've got, of course, is the Blast Bones. We'll buff up so you guys can see the Blast Bones tooltip. 15k, not insanely high, not bad either, though. Really nice, just kind of good damage for the Blast Bones. That Major Defile that it applies, also really great too for us to apply some great sustained pressure on this spec. Now, the thing about Blast Bones is that it just kind of can't target things properly in PvP, and the kit that we're running definitely reflects the fact that we're trying to make it easier for Blast Bones to work, but it's still a great skill. If you can get it to go off, you will see that you can just have this huge combo potential with it, and of course you'll see a lot of footage where Blast Bones did work for us, but we did have some times when Blast Bones just totally failed too. Now, something I do want to note is that this creates a corpse on death, and on this build it is very important to have a lot of corpse gameplay going on, so it's important that we run Blast Bones for that reason too. Now, the next skill that I've got is Resolving Vigor, and this is actually your primary oh crap heal for the build. Whenever your health is really low and you need to go for that big heal, Resolving Vigor is going to be the best option for you. We've got about a 15k tooltip on it. This, of course, will proc our Troll King as well, so this plus our Troll King health regen gives us quite a bit of bulk when we're just healing ourselves straight up. But we've got a lot more going into our bulk than just this Vigor, and we'll get into that when we get into the bow side of this kit. Now, the next skill that we've got is Hexproof. This is our primary purge for the build. While slotted, it reduces the cost of our abilities by 3% as well, which is really nice to give us a little bit more sustain on our front bar here. And it removes 4 negative effects, and it costs HP. This is really good on this build because we have so much healing over time. We can spam Hexproof, and we can really utilize it well. A big issue I had with Stam Necro previously is is I didn't have the healing power needed to actually make Hexproof a really good skill. It is much better on this build because we have that healing power. Now for the ultimate on our Sword and Board bar, I've actually gone with Spell Wall. This is going to give us the block of all enemy attacks and reflect projectiles for 6 seconds. It is also a fairly cheap ultimate. The reason I went with Spell Wall on the Sword and Board bar is because I just wanted to have a really strong defensive ultimate, and Necromancer does have the Goliath, don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to run the Goliath, but it's a great option if you don't want to run the Sword and Board ultimate. This is a good kind of mix in there as well. But I think the Sword and Board ultimate is probably the better defensive option between the two. It's much cheaper, and of course, you can defend against a lot of damage with it. I mean, incoming burst is pretty much your biggest weakness, and the Sword and Board ult will make it very hard for people to burst you down. But if there's too many players, they'll still kill you through the block, so don't get too overzealous with it. Now, switching over to our bow bar, this is where the Necromancer kit, I think, starts to get really interesting. So the first skill that we have is, of course, Poison Injection. This is just going to be a primary damage over time ability, just to make sure that we can keep up that extra pressure on our opponent. Necromancer, of course, gets a bonus to its critical chance as their health drops below 25%, but you know, we don't have an execute in this kit. We don't have a finishing move outside of that bonus crit chance, so the Poison Injection is going to act as that extra execute for this build. Now, the next ability that we've got is Skeletal Archer, and we talked about why this is important earlier when we were going over the hunt set. This is going to be access to our hunt set pretty much. It's going to be doing most of the hunt set procking. Blast Bones, of course, can proc the hunt set too, but you're going to get most of it out of the Skeletal Archer here, and it lasts for 16 seconds, dealing 2,500 physical damage, increasing in damage as it continues to attack its target. So I think that on a normal Necromancer build, honestly, the Archer is a little bit lackluster, but because we're running the hunt set, it has a lot of synergy for this build, and then of course it creates that Corpse on Death, which synergizes even more with our corpse-based gameplay that we've got going on here. Now, the next skill that we've got is pretty much the one skill that I think really brought this build together, and that's Dead in Pain. And this is going to restore 2 ultimate and heal us for almost 1,000 health every 1 second for 2 seconds per corpse that we consume when we use this ability. And while the heal is in effect, we gain major protection. So when you play this build correctly, the way you're going to do this is you're going to go for your armor buff and then your 2 pets. Preferably the defensive pet first and then the offensive pet, so you just get your defenses up as fast as possible. Now, after a period of time, you're going to either recast or these things are going to go away, and you get a minimum of 3 corpses when you do the recast. So you go for the Dead in Pain, and that gives you a 6-second heal over time and 6 seconds of major protection. Also, while slotted, we get a little bit of a damage reduction too. This is an incredibly good skill. Now, not only can we siphon corpses that we create, but we can also siphon dead enemies and other dead NPCs on the battlefield. This is an incredibly good ability on top of it because it's free. So we don't even have to have resources to get this really strong defensive heal / buff. Now, I'll say this. If you have 3 corpses on the ground, Dead in Pain is better than Vigor. It's going to give you better healing / protection than the Vigor will, just because of that major protection buff. But if you have 2 or less corpses down, still go for the Dead in Pain, but the Vigor is usually the better defensive option then. And of course, if you get up to 6 corpses on the ground, that's 12 seconds of major protection. That's really huge, man. Absolutely for free too. So this is the ability that I think really brings the Stam Necro together. It gives us that durability that we desperately need, and the way that this build kind of functions, you'll kite behind something, reset your buffs, and then go for the Dead in Pain and re-engage. So it allows you to have that really strong defensive buff up when you want to go offensive on your target as well. Now, the next ability we have is the Spirit Guardian, and this is here for a couple reasons. The first one, of course, is that 10% damage reduction while the Spirit is up. It's essentially an extra armor buff. It's actually more mitigation than our armor buff itself, so a really good defensive skill. It is a corpse as well, so it gives us more resource and more protection off the Dead in Pain, and then we get a little bit of healing every 2 seconds. Now, that is a very small amount of healing, and it's Magicka-based, so we'll have a poor crit rate on it, but because we have so many heals over time on this build, it just stacks with everything else, and you guys will see in the footage, it all helps. It all helps. It all makes a difference. Now, moving on to the next ability we've got the Beckoning Armor, and this is, of course, our primary armor buff. While active, we get the Major Ward and Major Resolve for the physical spell resistance buff And of course, we pull enemies that hit us with ranged attack into us on a 3-second cooldown. Now, we've got the pull on the sword and board bar, and we've also got the beckoning armor. I decided to go with both of the pulls just because it fits this gameplay really well, and the pull helps out a lot, especially when you're outnumbered. If a ranged player is coming at you out of stealth with a snipe or something, they end up stunning themselves and gimping their own combo. So I really, really like the beckoning armor for that reason. It makes it a lot harder for especially ranged Nightblades to gank you. And of course, when you're fighting Sorks, the beckoning armor can be really trolly to them as well. So there you go, guys. The ultimate on this bar, of course, we've got the Pestilent Colossus. This is going to be your primary damage ultimate for the build. Now, the Dead in Pain is actually going to give us a little bit of alt gen for each corpse that we siphon. And on top of it, when you interact with a corpse, as in siphon it, every 16 seconds you can generate an additional 10 ultimate. So you can actually build a lot of ultimate going for this kind of setup here. And it allows us to really spam the Pestilent Colossus. Well, maybe not spam, but it makes it kind of around the cost of 150 to 180 ultimate because we have such a good amount of alt gen just from our corpse gameplay. Now, this, of course, is going to deal that big whopping disease damage and then apply major vulnerability to any opponent we hit for 3 seconds, increasing the damage they take by 30%. This just ups the damage of all of our other combos, and because we can set this ultimate down on ourselves, we can throw it down and then pull people in with our Silver Leash and get some really nice combination kills with this ultimate. Now, if you want to run not the Sword and Board ult and you want to go for the Colossus instead, or the Bone Goliath, sorry, you can put the Colossus on the front bar so you get a little bit more crit % chance when your opponent's health begins to drop, and then you can just put the Bone Goliath on the back bar here. But if you're going to run the Sword and Board ult, you do need to put this on the back bar so you can use that Sword and Board ult on your front bar. Alright, so let's take a look at the champion points we're running on this spec. We're going to start off in the tower tree. I've got 51 Warlord, 11 in Bashing Focus, and 0 in Sprinter. Big focus on Warlord here because we're playing a medium armor stamina build. We're going to get stunned quite often. We want to do everything in our power not to get stunned, but it's going to happen, especially if we play outnumbered, so you want to have some points to conserve your stamina there. The Bashing Focus, because we're running Sword and Board, we have the really strong bash on the Sword and Board bar, so this is going to allow us to push a little bit more bashes out, giving us a little bit more sustain. I didn't put anything in Sprinter. We actually do quite a bit of sprinting on this build, but you know, we're already in medium armor. We've got the well fitted, and I wanted to put the points elsewhere, so we didn't put them there. Taking a look at the lover tree, we've got a whopping 75 in Mooncalf. A lot of points here. This is our primary resource that we need for action and combat, so we need to have a lot of stam recovery. And then we've also got 49 in healthy to give us that health recovery as well. If you guys want, you can even these out a little bit more and put a little bit more in healthy, but I did so extreme in Mooncalf here just because, well, the sustain is really important, I think, for a medium armor build like this, and I wanted to push it as far as we could to make it feel really good. Now, we get the Wind Running passive, which is really nice, increased health recovery and magicka recovery while sprinting, and 2% movement speed, so just nice for that mobility aspect. Now, taking a look at the Shadow Tree, we've got 40 Shadow Ward and 44 Tumbling. Nice even split between these two. We've got to block a lot, and we've got to roll a lot. Both Sword and Board is all about good block and roll gameplay, so we've got to have a lot of points in here to make that kind of fit. Now, taking a look at our blue tree, we've got nothing in the Apprentice. Moving on to the Atronach, we've got 81 Master at Arms, 23 Physical Weapon Expert, and I've actually got 16 in Shattering Blows. I just put a few points in here because, man, shields are strong and Sorks are trolly as crap, but outside of Sorcerer, man, this doesn't really help with much else. You could put it in Physical Weapon Expert if you want. We've got that Tactician passive. We use a roll dodge to dodge an enemy's attack, and we set them off balance. This is a very big deal because it gives us access to another stun, but not one that's a pull and grants them instant immunity. Instead, this will be a stun that they have to break themselves. So it's not really a super consistent stun, but at least in a one-on-one or a two-on-one, you can get some really reliable off-balance stuns on your opponents, and the Tactician passive is just fantastic for that. Now, taking a look at the Ritual Tree, we've got a nice even spread, 49 Mighty, 50 Piercing, 51 Precise Strikes. We've got around that 50% crit rate, so I think this is totally appropriate, just giving us the most amount of damage balanced out between these trees. Nothing in Thaum. We do have a few dots, but a majority of our damage is actually burst damage, so I didn't want to put any points in here. And the important passives we get is Perfect Strike for that weapon critical, really, really nice, and Exploiter for that bonus damage against an off-balance opponent, playing into that Tactician passive. passive. And then finally, the last stand. When we fall below 20% HP, we gain major heroism. And yeah, this is really nice because we have a pretty small HP bar and we can really easily fill it right back up to full health. So we'll be able to get a lot of usage out of this last stand passive. We can come back from very low HP, even though we're a heal over time build. We've got such powerful heal over time. It's like, you'll see in the footage, man. Sometimes it's like 2 seconds right back to full health. So really nice stuff. Now, taking a look at our red tree, in the steed, we've got 51 ironclad, 61 resistant, 25 for spell shield, medium armor, focus. Big focus on ironclad. Reducing incoming direct damage is very important. That's a lot of burst in PvP, and that is our biggest weakness. Resistant, also a really important place to put some points. Critical resist, very important for especially CP PvP, for us to have some really high crit resist to reduce the incoming crit damage we take. And then medium armor, spell shield, just equal split between these two to give us a little bit of a bulk to our armor value there. Now, taking a look at the lady tree, we've got 37 hardy and 37 elemental defender. I like this even split here. Nothing in thick skin because we have that really strong purge. You definitely don't need to have thick skin. The purge is really good. You can spam the crap out of it. It's a much better option than putting the thick skin here. And then finally, we've got a whopping 32 points for a little bit more healing power in our lord tree here. And that is the build, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into that PvP commentary. So for the first fight here, I've got a fairly long fight, a little bit of 1vx on this damn Necro, and we open up with our combo on the first kind of player there, the lower level player. We set down the blast bones, hit him with the poison injection, and then hit him with the pierce armor, and down he goes. Now we're going to open up on this next guy on siege, and this guy's actually very tanky. There we see the blast bones explode as well. We try to get some damage into him, but unfortunately we just don't hit very much, and I quickly retreat back to the rocks here. Now we are in medium armor, and we do have a bit of bulk and healing power, but I really don't want to get caught with a lot of opponents open field on me like that. So you're going to see me really use our speed here to just try to break terrain from these guys and just break this group apart. Now this guy is staying on his siege. I decide that I'm going to go look for another target because this guy is very, very tanky, and maybe we could kill him, but I don't want to go and dump the ult on the single player like that, as we've got a lot of action out here, and right away we get attacked again. The Nightblade coming from behind. We get him with a nice stun there with the partial charged heavy, give him the poke, we take the stun from the enemy Dawnbreaker, and we just keep our heals up here. And I go for the Colossus and go for some block and just pierce armor on these guys to bring down a player here. And I managed to hold my rocks here, just going to purge off those effects, reset my buffs, and re-engage with these guys. Now, something that's really big about this build that you guys will see is look at all the bodies on the ground. I go for that major protection first off the body pull, and then I go for the vigor. The major protection is incredibly strong, and when you have the bodies on the ground, you definitely want to utilize that. There you see we get a nice cheeky pull with the pierce arm, or with the silver leash on him, into the ransack combo there, bringing down that Sork, and we're just going to kite back inside the rocks here, and the enemy Nightblade goes into stealth, but he does not re-engage with us, and he ends up retreating out the side there, and this guy gets rezzed. I try to get him with the pull from the chain again. Unfortunately, the chain does not pull if your opponent moves too far away, even if it hits them. Just a little bit of a bug with that skill. Thank you, Necromancer, for helping me find all the bugs in this game. So as the Nightblade reopens, I rebuff up here, and I go for the major protection off the Dead in Pain, hit my vigor, and then we're going to drop our ultimate, and I try to get the chain pull on him, but he's too quick to go into stealth, and I end up wasting my ultimate there, but that's all right. We're just trying to get that trap to work with the chain pull. Had we got the pull on the Nightblade, that probably would have been a kill on him, and we're just going to come back to the side here, reset our pets, and just continue to re-pull from the Dead in Pain there. Really important that we cycle that Dead in Pain as often as possible. It's literally free to cast, lots of healing, the major protection. It's just a great way for us to heal ourselves without expending stamina on this build. The only thing we have to spend stam on is the stamina pet, but it's much cheaper than the vigor, so we actually have a pretty strong healing option outside of vigor. And there you see again, we go for that Dead in Pain before we go for the vigor, giving us that major protection, and then into the vigor, and this guy opens on us and just does no damage. We easily are able to heal that away, get a good pull there. We want the Blast Bones explosion, but Blast Bones is a little shy, just kind of staring at him. He goes into stealth, and Blast Bones ends up leaving, and we're just going to keep resetting our buffs and re-pulling the Dead in Pain here. We have to keep that buff up as often as possible. We see this player here. I set down the Blast Bones, get the pull there, go for the poke. Blast Bones Bones with the jump. We actually managed to get a nice clean Blast Bones kill there, and we've got 2 blue players that are going to open on us here. 1 blue player on the left, and the other guy opens out of stealth. We get a good stun on him with that bone armor. The pull off the bone armor, so great, and we set the Blast Bones down on this guy, go for the sword and board poke, and we quickly bring him down. And now we're just going to reset our buffs here, reset our Deaden Pain as well, get that protection up, and reopen on the Templar. Now, something about this Necromancer build is you really want to keep your pets up. If your pets fully expire, you have to reset them, and you have to go for that Deaden Pain right away, because if you are caught with your pets down, you are very, very susceptible on this build, because you don't have the easy access to the Deaden Pain, and you don't have the regen and the healing and damage mitigation that they provide. So we just keep working this guy, keeping our buffs up, cycling the Blast Bones on him. Eventually, we wear him down with that Defile, and we manage to finish him off. So after killing them, I'm just going to go for the pull from the bodies, getting that major protection up again, and we're just going to wait for these yellow to re-engage. This Nightblade falls off the edge here. We give him the poke with the sword and board, but he manages to get back into cloak, and we're opened up on by another Nightblade up at the top there. We get the off-balance stun. I try to get him with the partial charged heavy there, but he dodges our attack, preventing the stun there, and we take a lot of burst from these guys. Quickly go into our vigor here, reset our pets. Now, we were kind of caught with our pets down. They just had ended duration there, and we get 1 Deaden Pain out there, and we're just going to wait for these guys to re-engage, but the yellow are being a little bit shy here. We have killed a few of them already. This Sork engages with us. The Nightblade back out of stealth. We go for those really good purges. The vigor, just removing those curses, removing those negative effects. Reset our buffs here. Pull the Deaden Pain for that healing and that protection. And we just re-engage with this Sork. Now, the Sork ends up going over the other side of this rock here. So we just kind of do a little bit of a dance around. And the Sork re-engages here with the Nightblade. And we dot up the Nightblade with the poison injection. Set down the Blast Bones on him. Go for the pull. Now, the Nightblade, unfortunately, had the CC immunity, so we go for those sword and board pokes, and he ends up dodging them, so he manages to escape there, and we're just going to pull the bodies on the ground, reset our buffs again, and just re-engage with these yellow. Really enjoying this Deaden Pain. There we see the Nightblade opening with the Zon combo. We go for the Purge and the Vigor, and then we're going to reset our buffs around the corner again, using that mobility. I really like how we can use the mobility, swing around this corner, reset our buffs, and then re-engage with the major protection up. There we get a good pull on this Sork with her shields down. We try to set down the Blast Bones there, but unfortunately, we see a lot more yellow coming. And I'm just going to be patient here with how I engage with these yellow, because I know that they flipped the resource now and they're looking for something to chase. So we're going to stay on top of this Sork. I keep trying to get the pull here. Here we get the Blast Bones and the pull, but the yellow hit us hard out of stealth. We go for the Vigor. We go for the Purge. We roll back inside here, holding our block as we drop down, reset our pet buffs here. We take quite a bit of damage from this guy, but he does not stick around to fight us, and we just kind of wait for the rest of these yellow to move in. There's also a blue Sork that came by and went up the top of these rocks here, and I think the yellow chased him up there, so I just circle around the bottom and look to engage with these Nightblades. Get a good open on this Nightblade there. Now, he opened out of stealth on us, and we had our block down, but we had the major protection up, and he did very little damage out of stealth there, and we easily healed it away, and we're just going to continue to kite around back to our rocks here. There's more and more yellow starting to pile up on us. Reset our buffs, reset our pets, and we've got to have something to deal with these yellow. Now, the reason I keep coming back to this spot is because we have that big Necro Smash ultimate, and I want to lure these guys into a spot where I can do some considerable damage with the Blast Bones into that Colossus ultimate. And we've got a single yellow player that's kind of followed us around the outside here. I just reset my buffs again. We go for that Deaden Pain, take the fear from the enemy totem, but finally the yellow have decided to come in here and engage. We set down the ultimate. I go into my sword and board pierce armor spam. We take down 2 players right away on the stack there, and now there's a 3rd player that drops down. We're just going to hit him with that heavy attack, dot him up with the Blast Bones into the poison injection, and just feed him the pierce armor, and he tries to out heal it, man, but no, the heavy attack's not going to save him. We quickly finish him off as well, and now we've got just this Sork left here. I pull the Deaden Pain from the bodies again there, and the Sork ends up streaking away, and well, I end up skirmishing with these guys a little bit until we eventually go down. Now, moving on to the next clip, we've got a little bit of a 1v3, I believe. This enemy Templar opens as he's trying to go inside of the keep there, and we just put a bit of pressure into him, and now we've got 2 more yellow players coming out of stealth here too, and the Templar just spamming the toppling charge on top of us. Now, in a medium armor build, we are actually fairly weak to the toppling charge, because that is going to be an AoE if they change it to the undodgeable morph. Now, he's actually running the single target morph, but he's got the jabs, he's got the rest of that Templar kit we got to watch out for. I set down my ultimate there. We didn't have the Blast Bones for the combo as well, and the Templar responds really well with his block and is able to go into his Spear ult as well to get his protection buff, and he's able to easily tank that out. Now we're going to have to catch him with a nice combo to bring down that bulkier Templar, and now we've got a spot on the rock here. The 3 players kind of just chasing me around here, and I just keep resetting the buffs, resetting the vigor, and look at the corpses on the ground. We want to keep up that major protection, and while the major protection is up, we're actually quite durable, and as you can see, when we have the major protection up, I just let myself get hit by a few things a little bit more often, channel those heavy attacks. Here we see I'm trying to go for some offensive rotation, got a good kite from the other 2, and I'm just rotating on this Templar here, but unfortunately he is very bulky, and we're going to need that well-timed combo to bring him down, so we just keep cycling that major protection, that vigor, keeping our buffs up as well, and I go for the poison injection into the pull on this guy here. We've got the Blast Bones down as well. I keep giving him the pokes, but that Nightblade healer in stealth, it's kind of tough to see because she keeps going in and out of stealth, but you see her at the bottom there, and here I set my ultimate down, the Blast Bones explodes, and I go for the pokes, but that Nightblade healer, man, just throwing so many heals on these guys from stealth, and we're just going to have to tank that out and just kite our way back to the side here. The Templar continuing to chase us, but he doesn't have the pressure necessary, I think, to really threaten us here, and I just try to open up on the Nightblade, but she quickly goes right back into stealth. The one thing that this build is kind of missing is we don't have a really good stealth detect on it. We don't really have anything that can mess with Nightblades outside of the pulls, so we have a good anti-gank, but not the best stealth detect if we want to keep them from getting away. And this Templar here just staying right on top of us, but as long as we keep cycling that protection buff and cycling our vigors, we can easily tank out his damage, get a really nice combo in there with the Blast Bones, put some good damage into him. Unfortunately, he responds really fast, and the Nightblade healer in stealth, putting a lot of heals on him too. There we see a nice 3 corpse dead in pain there, and it's all because we just keep cycling those buffs in order, and we're just going to open up on this guy again. Just keep cycling the Blast Bones on him. The longer we can keep that major defile down, the better chance we have of beating him. And there we see again a really nice siphon off the corpses. Keeping our protection buff up just makes it very hard for the Nightblade up top there and the Nightblade in stealth healing this guy to have any good option to kind of attack us here. The enemy Templar goes for his Spear ult. Now he's going to be a little bit bulkier in that, I think, if he's going for the bulkier one, and we're just going to keep setting the buffs down. We get some nice big Blast Bones crits in him every now and then, so I'm just waiting for that opportunity. There we see the pull with the ultimate, really well timed. We managed to bring down the Templar. The Nightblade healer in stealth, she ended up taking off, and we've just got this last guy at the top here. He spams his ultimate there, and I just block it. We purge it away, and now we're going to come up and get this guy. He's sitting there in crouch. He doesn't even really do much, man. He just stands there and spams his Magnum shot, but he's got nothing to stop us from beating on him here, and we finish him off. And we managed to bring the fight home. Now moving on to the next clip, we've got a little bit more 1vx on the Necro. I actually played this build just solo, and out of all the Necro builds I've played, this is definitely the best one, but I think I said that earlier. Anyway, moving on to this clip here, the yellow are chasing down these blue. We open on the side of the yellow group, and they ended up chasing me to the top of this thing here. We get pulled by the Dragon Knight chains. Oh my god, so dirty, but we just keep moving our way up to the top, jump over the barrels there, and try to break enough distance that the DK can't hit us with the chains. Now, we're fairly low on stamina here, and we're just going to reset our pets, go for that major protection as well, and we're going to try to open up on one of these guys. The Nightblade's opening up on us here. We go for the Sword and Board ult for the defensive option so we can channel those heavy attacks as well, and I just start setting the Blast Bones down. And unfortunately, this Blast Bones, man, he just does nothing. He just stands there. He eventually explodes and puts a bit of damage into these guys, but we're just going to have to go for a bit of a kite again. We managed to get a bit of stamina back there as we had the Sword and Board ult up, get a good pull on this guy here, try to put the damage into him. Unfortunately, he's just out of reach of my combo there, so we go for a kite back around the side of this stuff here, set down the pets again. We're going to get that major protection and open up on this Warden here. Now, the Warden comes in, crit rush on us. We set the Blast Bones down. We already poison inject her. Tried to go for the Pierce Armor there. She ends up rolling it. We're going to reset our pets, go for that Dead in Pain again, so we get that major protection, and I move my way up to the top, just staying dynamic with the movement, trying to get these guys to split a little more, and there we see we get the Nightblade jumping on us. I get him with the poison injection, good stun with the partial charged heavy into the Sword and Board poke, a nice clean cancel, and we bring him down. Now this guy goes for the res. We just cycle our buffs as we bash the res back into the Dead in Pain, and the Warden re-engages with us here. We're going to set the Blast Bones down on her, go for the Pierce Armor, start working her a little bit, bash this guy really fast. She goes into her ultimate, and we manage to finish her off with the Pierce Armor before she stuns us with the Permafrost there, and the last guy ends up running on out of here. So we take that fight home. And finally, guys, we've got one last clip for you today, and this is another 1v3 on this Tham Necro. We just come up on the back end of this group here, and they're all riding away, but we're just poking them with the bow, trying to get some damage in, get good damage into that DK with the Blast Bones, the poke combo there. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of pressure from the enemy players chasing us, so I go for quite a long kite here, all the way down to these rocks. Now, we didn't really have much terrain to work with anywhere else, so we get down to the rocks, we set down the Dead in Pain, and I turn around, and a lot of the blue didn't commit to the chase here. Only a few followed me down, so we just dot up the DK right away. Blast Bones on his way. He actually goes and explodes. Great pathing there. Thank you, Blast Bones. And we're just going to keep working on this DK here and just get the Dead in Pain, keep our buffs up, keep our pets up, and just wait for our opportunity to get some good burst here. Keep working this guy with our Blast Bones as well. We get a good pull on the DK there, go for the Pierce Armor poke, and we get a good damage into him. Unfortunately, it's not enough, and we're forced to pull out. The DK goes for his ultimate. This other player ended up taking a lot of flack from our combo there. We give him a quick Pierce Armor to bring him down, and now we've got the DK and a Magicka Nightblade again left here to fight. Now, I am actually going to let the rest of this video play out for you guys, so I hope you enjoyed the last fight we've got for you here. I had a lot of fun with this Stamina Necromancer build. I think I've finally figured out what makes Necromancer click for me, and it feels a lot better in PvP. I'm having a lot more success with it, and I'm excited to see ZeniMax fix up some of these Necro skills so that this feels even better to play in the future. Now, if you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. I create regular ESO content, and I'm always making new builds. We've got top 5 content from the community as well, and we've got community featured builds. So if you guys want to see a whole plethora of great ESO content, I would highly recommend sticking around for more videos from this channel. If you guys are interested in sending in clips for the top 5 or sending in a build to be featured on the channel, you guys can send that in to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. More information down in the description below. We also go over the top 5 battles live on Twitch together, and I do all my gameplay live on Twitch, so if you guys want to be a part of the live experience, you can check out a link to my Twitch channel down in the description below. And finally, guys, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first 14 days. If you guys want to give them a shot, no credit card to sign up via the description below as well. And last but not least, if you guys really love the show and you want to help support it, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this job that I love so much. So thank you for watching. Thank you guys for helping out, and I hope to see you again next time. Have a great night, everyone.